Filch has always been this strange character in the Harry Potter books. He's the caretaker at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and he's also a squib, meaning he has magical parents but shows no magical ability himself. He doesn't really have an impact on the story. I mean, he is always there to yell at Harry and get angry at students, but he's always just passed off as being the old mean caretaker. But what if I told you that there might be more to Filch than meets the eye? What if he is connected and has more impact on the story than we initially thought? What if this whole time Filch was working for Voldemort? When it comes to the characters in Harry Potter, we usually know a lot where they come from and their background. But when it comes to Filch, there really isn't a lot to go off about his early life. As I said, he possesses no magical ability, and he also owns a cat called Mrs. Norris. But apart from that, there is no real background to his character. But we do know that he started working at Hogwarts around 1973. Now, 1973 is around the time when the First Wizarding War began. Voldemort properly rose to power in 1970, and this is when Hogwarts would have been at an uncertain threat. We know that Filch took over from a man called Apollyon Pringle, who was the Hogwarts caretaker in the 60s, and according to Molly Weasley, he was there when her and Arthur were at school. But it seems so strange that Filch would have been hired in the first place. I'm unsure if the other caretakers were magical or not, but Filch's job just seems kinda useless. He's in charge of cleaning Hogwarts Castle and giving students detention when they are in trouble in the day or when they're out of bed at night. So this guy has to clean all of Hogwarts. And I mean, all of Hogwarts. Have you seen how big this school is? It's massive. There are 142 staircases, and that's not mentioning classrooms, hallways, and other places in the school. We also see Filch during the day and night. So, does this guy ever get to sleep when he's wandering the hallways at night? No wonder he's always so cranky. So, Filch's job seems kind of completely useless, considering a teacher could clean a part of the castle with one wave of their wand. So, yeah, I'm not buying into his job. So, what if Filch isn't choosing to do his job? What if Voldemort is putting him up to it? I mentioned before that Voldemort rose to power in 1970. A few years later, Argus Filch got the job of caretaker at Hogwarts. So what I'm suggesting is that Filch is working for Voldemort under his orders. And I know what you're thinking, come on, that seems a little far-fetched. I mean, why would Voldemort get a squib to work for him? And also, why would Filch agree to something like this? Well, the idea isn't as crazy as you might think. Filch has never been a nice person. He is definitely a grey character. He's big on rules and punishments and is enforcing many on students if he can get them past Dumbledore, which is not very often. He likes the old punishments, like students being hung by their ankles in the dungeons, and is a big supporter of Umbridge when she took over the school, and she even gave him permission to whip students. So yeah, Filch really isn't that nice. And this is where I think Voldemort's plan goes into action. The real reason why I think Voldemort would make Filch go to Hogwarts to become the caretaker is to spy on Dumbledore and make sure that nobody uncovers Voldemort's biggest, darkest secrets. It is mentioned countless times that the only wizard that Voldemort ever feared was Dumbledore, and I can imagine that Voldemort would definitely want to know what his greatest rival was up to and make sure that he was not a threat. And Dumbledore was up to something, starting the Order of the Phoenix, the army to fight against Voldemort. Filch would have most likely been snooping around and would report back to Voldemort ever so often. We know that Filch has a good knowledge of the secret passageways at Hogwarts and of the secret entrances, just as good as the Marauders, the Weasley twins, and Harry himself. So this is how he could have got out and in of the castle to report to Voldemort, when Voldemort was still powerful during both Wizarding Wars, and nobody would see him. Voldemort would basically be using Filch just like how he used Wormtail to bring him back to life, but then just considered him as a servant even though he was still loyal. I can also imagine that the real reason why Filch would wander the hallways at night would be to stop any students that would be out of bed to make sure that they don't find the Room of Requirement, where Voldemort hid one of his Horcruxes, the diadem. After Voldemort had left Hogwarts, he came back and tried out for the Defense Against the Dark Arts job. He didn't get it and then he disappeared. But before that, he hid the diadem in the Room of Requirement so no one would find it. but as we know, people do stumble into the room requirement. So Filch would make sure that any student that was out of bed would get punished, and he would also keep an eye on them to make sure that they weren't up to something. This is probably why he thinks something is up when Harry starts Dumbledore's army, and he wants to catch whoever is going into the room for requirement so they don't find a famous item that has been missing for centuries. Especially Harry, who Filch keeps an annoyingly close eye on at Hogwarts. Now, I know that Filch doesn't possess any magical ability, but it seems like every time Harry's out of bed, Filch just happens to be there in that exact part of the castle where Harry is. Harry does not usually get caught by Filch, but how does Filch know to be in that part of the castle at that time? Because there are many instances where Harry bumps into Mrs. Norris, Filch's cat, and moments later Filch comes running in to see what Harry's up to. So how does he get there so fast with no magical ability? The only time in the books where we see Filch with any magical ability is in the Chamber of Secrets when Harry is in Filch's office and sees a letter that he is taking a spells course, but he fails and doesn't learn any magic. But why would he want to learn magic in the first place? Is it to improve his reputation as a squib? Or is it to make Voldemort see him differently? So there are many examples of Filch proven to be mean, but why would he want to work for a dark wizard, or even a wizard in general? Squibs in the magical community are seen to be lower class and made to feel like they don't belong. So is this Filch's way of trying to make it feel like he belongs? No. Filch is not a great person, but there is no way that he would serve Voldemort. I think that Filch isn't doing this intentionally. I think that Filch is under the Imperious Curse. If you are unsure what this spell is, it's one of the 3 unforgivable curses. If someone is under the Imperious Curse, they are held against their own will to do what the caster of the spell wants them to do. Voldemort used this spell a lot in the Wizarding Wars, and he would always use it to his advantage. And I believe that he would use this spell to make Filch go to Hogwarts and keep an eye out on Dumbledore and the Room of Requirement. If Filch was put under the spell around 1973, the spell wouldn't have been broken until 1998 at the Battle of Hogwarts, or a short time before that. But Filch does not appear that much in the Deathly Hallows, so he was most likely helping out in the Great Hall with the injured at the Battle of Hogwarts, showing that he has indeed changed. So he might have been released from the spell at the start of the school year when the Carrows came to Hogwarts and took over the school with Snape as their headmaster, meaning that Filch was cursed for around 25 years. But I mean, surely Dumbledore would have known something was up, or anyone else in the school? Well, not necessarily. And this is where it makes Voldemort's plan seem kind of brilliant, because no one would suspect that a squib would be working for Voldemort. And Filch must have proven himself pointless in the long run for the spell to be eventually lifted. But what do you think? Could have Filch been working for Voldemort this entire time? Share your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching this video. I thought a Harry Potter theory would be a good way to celebrate Harry Potter Day, the 31st of July. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and give this video a big thumbs up, and I'll see you next Friday.